Los puppies están perdidos? Los puppies están perdidos.
Blue light has to be. I'll be a bit closer.
Oh, hello, gentlemen.
Who's he talking to?
Keep looking around.
Yeah.
Hello, fellows.
Hello.
Maybe I should just share Aaron's mic because I'm on a delay.
Delay again. Why is that? Oh, okay.
Okay, we are on.
All right. Welcome back.
Hello.
ArTechník.
ArTechník. Back for another...
3 months in.
I have something to drink.
Surprisingly,
clear.
not iced coffee.
That's true. What's wrong? Who am I?
I have no idea.
It's like I don't know you anymore.
Did you ever?
Ow. All right. Now I know who you are, the guy that hits people.
Oh.
That's what that noise was.
So, Bat Hamlet is opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting props and costumes and masks. It's going to be crazy.
I'm excited. When does that open?
July 17th.
That is real
So,
soon.
like 3 days ago.
And talk about how you get the
Music.
walk-on.
Talk about
Shush. The walk-on
shush
roll.
music.
Oh, yes, we have
Yeah.
a fundraiser for Essential Theater, which is the producing company this time around. You can actually enter a raffle and win a walk-on roll at the end of Bad Hamlet. And they do the drawing about a week before the performance, so you can actually plan, oh, I need to get tickets for some other night because I'm going to be in the night I thought I was going. Or you know that you're going to be able to just use your show ticket and come watch the show.
Because either way, you're going to have a show ticket because
Yeah.
you were going to go see it.
So you're entered into the raffle when you buy the ticket, or you have
Not
to...
like you have to buy a separate thing
Okay.
for the raffle ticket.
Oh, I was just implying that everyone would be buying tickets to the show in general,
Oh,
in the
yeah.
universe.
Because I remember you talking about it, and there was a link on my
Yeah.
Facebook, so I clicked it. But all it did was take me to...
I think they fixed that now.
Okay,
if you
good.
go to the Bat Hamlet fan page on Facebook, there should be a working direct link
Because
to...
I am very excited and interested about entering this raffle.
It would be fun because we have not gotten to be on the same stage in a non-show
Sounds-
produced... In a show that we haven't produced. We haven't
Right.
been on the same stage in quite some time,
Since
possibly
college.
So even though this would sort of be
Order, yeah.
this other thing, it would be fun
If you
to...
want to count the storytelling thing we did in Callaway,
That was part of college, though.
it was. I'm just trying to think which came first, that or the
How many
Out
how
of
many
order.
years BC was that?
BCE.
Excuse me.
Yeah, come on. CE,
No,
BCE.
BC. I don't know what kind of sterile, non-God world you live in. All right.
Just don't hit me again.
What about BP, before podcast?
There we go. We'll define all of our life prior to like 18 weeks ago.
The new era has started.
So the link is, you can go directly at essentialtheater.com/bh.htm. I'll put that link on the show notes.
Thank you.
But yeah, so it's going great. It's going fun.
I'm sitting here looking at your telescope, and I am thinking back to the transit of Venus.
Yeah.
And you have a good story, I think.
So a little while ago during the transit of Venus, we were like trying to make little shoebox shadow boxes and viewers and things like that. And you could sort of see this little smudge with a slightly darker smudge on one side of the smudge. But we thought it was probably really the leaves projecting in rather than a clear shot of the sun. And so we came back in and we were watching some of the NASA footage, and they were talking about the various previous transits and how people observed it at the time and how they were able to use that to calculate the astronomical unit. And I saw this picture of one of the scientists, an illustration of him with the telescope sort of pointing back over his shoulder and projecting it onto his workspace. And I was like, oh, that's right. A telescope would project backwards that way. So we took the telescope out and we set it up, and we got a nice crisp white cardstock paper, and we found the sun, and we were projecting it through the telescope, and it was like, okay, there's also sort of a light smudge with a dark smudge, and then we fidgeted and adjusted it, and all of a sudden, like, it got into perfect projection focus, and it went from unquestionable, like, this is maybe the sun, to not only is this the sun, but that's Venus, and these are sunspots.
Oh,
and
wow.
So even when it's not doing a transit, it would be a really cool way to, do this reverse projection with a telescope.
And family bonding.
My folks were all out there, and my mom was holding the telescope while one of us, my dad or I, was holding the card, while the other was taking, like, camera phone pictures with our phones, trying to keep everything in the right place and the right orientation to make it all work out. But it was really cool when it clicked in, and suddenly it was like, that little black dot is the same size as the rock I am standing on.
Yeah.
Compared to the sun. And it changed the way.
Yeah.
I knew in the abstract the size differences between everything, but that was a really clear moment for me. When it wasn't I
Right.
was watching it on the NASA channel, it wasn't that I was seeing a picture on a computer screen. I was seeing an actual ray traced image of the sun and the transit, and I suddenly knew exactly how big I was in the world. Well, in the universe.
Right.
It was awesome.
Well,
That's
I was
cool.
busy playing football and chasing girls.
Lies.
Really?
Lies.
I'm about to say I don't know you if that's what you were doing.
And beating up punks who like ray traced drawings of Venus.
Wow. I got nothing. You're looking at me, and
Adam?
I've had a week of hibernation. I say the most exciting thing I've done is I've started making green smoothies for breakfast, filled with spinach and kale. They're delicious.
You're in for a good episode, everybody. Hang in there. The excitement will never end.
We'll post Adam's special spinach and kale smoothie recipe on the show notes.
I've been experimenting this week.
You've figured it out?
I have. At least I figured out like my go-to standard, but I'm trying different ones too. It was just something I read about I think a couple months ago, and I'm just kind of in that place where I'm just trying a bunch of new things. And 2 weeks ago, I decided this was it. Gonna start drinking spinach for breakfast.
There you go. I've worked
Thank
spinach
you,
into every
Popeye.
other meal I've had. Why not breakfast?
Yeah, they said it couldn't be done.
I would
Did
scramble
they really?
And I don't know who those
Who?
people were.
Who are these people?
You probably said it.
I said it shouldn't be done.
Shouldn't. Okay.
I scramble
I
spinach.
generally am
into my
trying to
eggs,
get you
for
to
sure.
stop eating vegetables in general. I'm trying to get you to go to Crystal Burger after this.
He really is. And I had like, remember I told you that like the last time I ate at Crystal, like there was a moment I was like, this may be the last time I ever eat at Crystal, just because
yeah.
of the next day and the way you feel.
You're
And there
just
goes our potential for a Crystal sponsorship on
yeah. You're just lucky it's not Monday and there's not lasagna around, because I would just be difficult to deal with.
All right, Garfield.
That's right.
Yeah, you were even wearing an orange shirt. That
Shut
works.
up. Thanks, Odie. I'm gonna push you off the damn table.
It's funny. You were talking about the.
Does that make Aaron John?
I'm glad something's funny. Go on.
It was funny. Well, like funny
we
weird.
will let them judge.
Not like haha funny, like, hey, that's weird. I'm looking at this article and Aaron's talking about Venus and the sun and things. There's this contest that I came across which kind of piqued my interest. It's called the Iron Egghead, and it's being sponsored by Scientific American and this thing Sci-V and Sci-V TV. And basically the contest is you take some everyday objects, and you have to use, I think, all of the objects in this, and you have to explain some sort of scientific process or biological process using, and these are the things that you must use in your explanation and demonstration, paper or another equivalent writing surface, pen or some other writing implement such as a pencil or crayon, rubber bands, paper clips, string or yarn, cups and balls, ping pong, tennis ball, basketball. And I think you have until the end of October, I think the end of October to get these videos in. October 31st, yeah. And
That's all you're allowed, or you must use at least.
it says must use, so I guess you could use additional things. It doesn't specify. I'm just kind of going over the cursory article
Of course,
I found
go
that
on.
talked about it. But but anyway, basically, there's a panel of judges that'll look at it, and the winning video will be featured on Scientific America's website along with runners-up. And there's also be a viewer's choice as well, and so anybody can go and watch these videos and decide which one I guess they feel is the most entertaining, the most thorough, the most whatever.
Neat.
Yeah, I thought it was neat because what few things I know about science really stuck with those types of demonstrations. I'm very much I need to see it done, or I need to see some
Like Mr.
representation.
Wizard.
I love
Mr. Wizard.
That's exactly what
I
I thought
wish
about.
I always think of the dry hand in water. Where he puts the.
Oh, the powder on the
Yeah.
surface tension of the water.
Oh yeah.
I think we've got to get. I mean,
We gotta
Sid
get
the
Mr.
Sci-
Wizard. Say we gotta get Mr.
We gotta
Wizard
get-
on the show. Is he
There's
dead?
a-
Don't tell
yeah.
me he's dead. Oh my god!
Like a while ago.
People have to stop laying these deaths on me.
But not like this morning.
No.
Inconsolable.
This is a while ago.
Let me
See,
be inconsolable.
My point was that we've got to get something like Mr. Wizard back on television.
Zombie Mr. Wizard.
No. But I think perhaps.
I just drank Aaron's water.
How, anyway. I think that's.
You are inconsolable.
I think that's a show we could put together.
Yeah. Well, you heard about was it Seth MacFarlane?
It's bringing back
Cosmos.
Cosmos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
'Cause-
really great.
Because it's the same sort of thing. He's just like, TV is sort of want right now for a show about science.
To inspire and really.
Right, yeah.
There's Sid the Science Kid, which is actually a great technological discussion we'll have on our puppet episode that I know
Okay.
we have talked about having in the near future.
Yeah.
Because that's actually a really fascinating show, the way they create it. And Sid the Science Kid does a really great job of getting people or kids interested in the
this is that
ideas
Muppet.
of
Digital
scientific method, to the point where one of my sister's best friend's kids, the way the mom gets her to do certain things is she's like, well, why don't you experiment with cleaning your room and observe the
Observe how I don't spank you.
well, not quite that, but like,
Yeah.
to get her to do things, she'll like phrase it as a scientific exploration, and the kid's all over it because of Sid the Science Kid. So, but that sort of the scientific method, the not accepting exactly what you're shown, exactly what you're told, find
Unlike
the answers
politics.
for yourself. Right, exactly.
Right,
Unlike
okay.
politics
Got
and
it.
religion.
Got it.
But we don't have anybody who really leads kids through specific experiments the way Mr. Wizard did, the way that got me so excited about the supermarket science, where you could just pull out things from your fridge and do science right then.
Well, and Beekman carried that torch for a while.
He did.
Bill Nye.
Bill Nye,
Yeah.
yeah. Who I always confuse with the cosmetics guy company.
That's Ben
Bill
Nye.
I know. But I want to be like Bill Nye, the cosmetics guy.
What's funny about Bill Nye is I remember really early on when he was in the Almost Live show from Seattle, I think. And he was a sketch comedian on Almost Live.
They would show those in the early days of Comedy Central, I remember. He'd always do a bit, usually at the end of the show.
And I remember like the first comedic joking appearance of Bill Nye the Science Guy, because he was, highly trained scientist who then decided to do sketch comedy,
Right.
like you do.
Right.
And so he would occasionally do comedic experiments, like, if you jump when the elevator is falling, will you live or die? Kind of like a Mythbusters style.
pre-Mythbusters.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember his really rickety egg creation, and it was like this elevator box that dropped, and then there was a spring that was released, and the egg was thrown up in the air right as the elevator crashed, and you saw whether or not the egg would survive. And then he became Bill Nye the Science Guy, and now he's a great proponent for science and education, and he's out there, and he's doing some great work.
He was another one, speaking of, it was a month or so ago, and he's also involved in a project that is similar to this, where videotape, they tape explanations and demonstrations of scientific processes, and they're uploaded. And I think this is with the Department of Education. But the really cool thing about the process for your video to be evaluated and put in this database of explanations is it is completely reviewed by children. What? Children watch the videos and have the final say. And they said, the interesting thing is you would think that the kids would tend to pick the ones that are maybe funnier or, more grab your gotcha. But he says generally the ones that they have been voting on have been the more thoroughly explaining whatever the process is. Like they said, the kids are really critical about, well, yeah, that was fun, but it doesn't really explain how your red blood cells,
right.
deliver oxygen or whatever it is.
I had that experience with Syllabus, which was a thing that we just did with Right Club in Atlanta. They do, I believe it's, I'm not going to say it because I'm going to get it wrong. Anyway, once a month they do Syllabus. Topher's going to yell at me because he's got a whole chart on Facebook.
Syllabus
Wednesday,
specifically
fourth
is the fourth Wednesday.
Fourth Wednesday.
Right,
I knew it. I just doubted
schedule.
myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, Syllabus is thing where they get basically a panel of you could call them experts, I suppose.
But not on their subject. Just
not on their
experts
subject.
On something.
Just experts on something, right? And they get a topic for the evening, and basically the writers sort of duke it out, if you will, via their pieces. But unlike kind of what you're saying, instead of the goal being to entertain, the real goal is, who really scratches your thought itch? Who makes you think about the subject, the larger subject in depth more? And which I think gives people who are good writers but perhaps less performance-based individuals an edge. Like for example, I lost. And I know one of the reasons that I lost is that while I think I was entertaining, my article could have hit more, could have made more clear points, could have made better points, could have been more edu and less tainment in my edutainment.
Interesting.
And I think there's
things to keep in mind, Aaron.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
finish your thought.
Yeah. And so I know that's why I lost, because the goal of that was, and the audience, just like the kids you're talking about, the audience really got it. They're like, yeah, I mean, so and so is funny, but this is what I'm gonna go home, drive home, argue about, think about, talk about.
I get to be in this month's syllabus. I've been selected for the science category, and my expertise was puppetry, and is my listed expertise, and my category is science, specifically ecology.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm going to be discussing ecology on July 25th at Push Push Theater in Atlanta. Come out, root for me, vote for my class.
Where do you get tickets?
Yeah, Push, or I will look that up while we're talking.
And post it. Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about, and the thing that we were just talking about with Syllabus, makes me have to ask, what the hell happened to the role of science in not just social discourse but political discourse and just culture in general? Like, what the hell happened? Like, when did science stop becoming perceived as a priority for cultural discourse and opinion? When did it become cool to stop knowing stuff about science?
Almost shameful to know things about
yes.
science. Be smart, to be elite.
When did that happen?
Yeah,
no, I mean, really asking, when did it happen?
Yep.
I was I don't know. They said it's a general trend that's been happening over the last 30 or 40 years. It seems like it's really been exacerbated in the last 10.
They say?
Well, this article that I read.
Okay, I didn't hear the part about an article you read. All I heard was they say, and I was like...
And again, I don't even remember who they are. Like, I don't remember where I read this. But basically,
so we're really
no better
the
than
article.
Sure. So them say that just basically there's this over the last 20, 30 years, they said, and I think they were looking at specifically people that had served in Congress and how they said debates on bills that are trying to be introduced to be voted on, how there seemed to be a bigger importance back in the day of, backing up everything that you're proposing with numbers and statistics and research, and how they said the general trend now doesn't seem to be that anymore. It's very sort of anecdotal or opinionated. Emotion-based. They'll have charts, but the charts
if you look at what the data really is, like the percentages, maybe
it says nobody even really looks at it. Like you watch, and I do this sometimes. You watch the debates on C-SPAN,
right.
and and they bring out all of these charts and all these PowerPoints, and it's just like this carousel of stuff that you kind of become numb to because they don't explain anything that they're really showing you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll pull out this bar graph and put it behind them, and then talk about a personal experience or their really personal belief about what they think why you should vote for this bill.
Okay, all right. Okay, can I be perhaps over the top and sensationalist about this just for the point of making an argument? In what way is art to blame for that, and people who execute art well to blame for it? For example, performance art in politics, visual graphic art in presenting these charts and data that you're talking about, and most importantly, I think in the internet age, the art of using video to craft emotion, because that is what I think video does best, is craft emotion to bend people to certain opinions.
I think what you're talking about is a lot of it is, I would say, video related, and the way you can't present too many facts in that 1 minute commercial or that 1 minute soundbite. It really is about emotion that you're just trying to hook them
right
to whatever your cause is, and I guess you could say it is to blame, which is probably why they don't bother focusing on the numbers so much, because they know that we as a culture and society aren't really trained to look at those hard facts and numbers anymore. We just look at the emotional hook.
So, I mean, is it us? Is it our generation? Are we the transition point for it?
No, I think we're past it. I think the
transition.
Think so? I think the transition has happened, and now it's just part of who we are.
Sure. I mean, I come from a very self-centered generation, so I just assume that all of it is
your fault.
Yes, and my right, or whatever. I don't know. I'm just going off the rails now, but
I do feel like a lot of it comes from the transition of news being a public service to news being an entertainment source. I've been watching Newsroom the last couple of weeks, the new Sorkin on HBO, and they set up a very powerful argument that the news was the airwaves were given to the networks with the exchange that they would do an hour of public service information, which became the evening news. And they did not put in any stipulations that there couldn't be advertisements during that hour.
Right.
And because it became a very reliable, fast news source, before the internet, obviously, the fastest way to get the news was to see it on that evening, live on television. And so lots of people were turning into the evening news when it was the primary news medium source.
Right.
Therefore, lots of eyes were on the commercial breaks during the evening news. So not only were they getting free airwave time, they were also getting commercial revenue.
Right.
The more that commercial revenue brought in, the more they focused on news. So then there was morning news and evening news. And then we've delved into the 24-hour news networks, which generate all of their commercial revenue with the idea that news must gather eyes, must gather attention. So rather than giving the strict, in-context version of the news that most helps you at the ballot, most helps you make decisions, helps you make educated decisions, instead you get the most sensationalized version of the news, because a sensationalized version of the news brings in audience. Audience raises commercial income.
Revenue, right.
Yeah.
Right.
They're no longer beholden to the audience that they're targeting. They're beholden to the advertisers that are giving them the money.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a bit of a cycle because then audiences expect sensationalized, exciting news, to the point where, it's got to be the first one out of the gate, which means that you report whether Obama's healthcare plan is constitutional or unconstitutional, and you broadcast it wrong for 7 minutes.
And now again, this is something that is almost uniquely American.
Yes.
Because you look at things like BBC and like the news services in Canada, and they are they get money from the state.
Yeah.
And so there isn't that burden to sensationalize things. I mean, if you've never watched I love watching the BBC News early in the morning on my computer, and it's a huge difference. If you've never watched it, the difference between what a broadcast is for BBC and what it is for NBC, CBS Nightly News, or any of the 24-hour news networks, it's calm, it's factual, it's informative. Mm-hmm. You almost get a better sense having that sort of outside objective eye as to what's going on here than sometimes I feel watching the.
I listen to a lot of the BBC World on just the NPR streams that I can get here, but not that money hasn't always been a thing in politics, and not that. What concerns me is, and I guess with the state funding offsetting things in other countries, perhaps it will hopefully remain different, but is it fair for me to say that the United States, at least in fiction production of video content, tends to lead the way, kind of like we often seem to do in music, as far as like things are. How many times do you hear, we want this to be like it is in the States, as far as like a style of music, or a way of doing television, or a way of doing.
I think, and I don't know this because I haven't lived all over the place, but I think there's far less let's make things like America does it around the world than we as Americans tend to believe there is.
Right.
Because so many of the other countries peak us out so completely in reading levels and writing levels and science and math comprehension to the basic citizen, rather than this specialized few, this cult of science.
In America, we only need to count to 50, son.
That's exactly right. I mean, somebody was...
Because of the States. I just got it. I was like, why 50?
Oh, robots.
I was in this discussion just a few days ago, actually, with somebody who was just trying to be a contrarian and point something out, but he had this very interesting point of the science has become so distant in the United States that we do have our scientists that tell us what is science, and it was when the CERN particle, the Higgs boson, or the boson that acted awful lot like the Higgs, but maybe not. He was like, what makes it true other than the fact that we take these people's words at it, that they've done the experiments and that other people have done the experiments? And it was just sort of this interesting idea that basic scientific comprehension and experimentation in the scientific method is so poorly understood in the United States these days that it has become this obscure occultness of what is science. Now, I know he was trying to be a contrarian, and that his point was, backwards, but it's an interesting way to look at things. I do tend to believe that the underrepresentation of scientific education beyond memorize these 6 facts to pass biology this semester. That idea of having to get out there and really experiment yourself and not take what you're handed, even by scientists, at face value and for granted, to do your own research, to do your own exploration, is such an important thing that's lacking in scientific education, which I think we've ranted about before on this podcast.
That's why I'm building my particle accelerator in the basement.
To make sure that the boson
of every
exists.
neighborhood in the house. Every house in the neighborhood. Ooh.
Sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why am I not drinking coffee right now?
Yeah, you made that
You
choice.
thought it would keep you sharper during the podcast.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I guess my personal take on it is I get a sense that, at least in this country, scientists and academics are looked on as sort of elitist.
Yeah.
Like,
and political scales as well, we
Yeah.
don't want to vote for him. He went to a good school and passed all his classes.
Yeah.
I want the person running the country to be smarter than I am.
Yeah.
I want my person running my city to be smarter than I am.
Yeah, it's this weird backwards thinking that we almost become more mistrustful the maybe more qualified they are.
Because they turn into the lizard. I'm just saying.
In a limited sample group, that is 100% true.
While the rest are Norman Osborn. Okay? Okay. You can't... Look, okay. All right, let's play a word association game here.
All right.
All right? Scientist.
Blue.
I would have said mad.
Okay. Give me another one.
All right, all right.
This is really more telling of your psychology than...
Fine. I'm okay making this about me. Experiment.
Poke.
I would have said destroyed Manhattan. All right, we'll do one more. Controlled.
Lockdown.
I would have said monster.
Oh.
All right.
Wow. So, that's that.
That's the other thing I'm building in my basement.
A monster.
How many mad scientist characters are out there? Maybe art is the problem here as well. Maybe scientists are misrepresented too often in art.
To be fair, I was props designer for Jekyll and Hyde, and I went to the science department at our college, and I met with a biology professor who we had a good relationship from the theater department over with her. She always came to all the shows and everything, so I had a meeting with her, and I said, look, I have to assume that while you were in school, or now that you're a professional, at some point you have designed your dream mad scientist laboratory, and you know exactly what it's going to look like and exactly what you're going to build in there. And she sort of chuckled quietly to herself and
In
nodded
like a disconcerting way.
And then I was like, I need to build Dr. Jekyll's laboratory for the stage. And she was like, all right, come with me. And we went through the lab into the supply room, and she just started pulling equipment off the shelves. And she's like, you're going to need one of these and one of these, and this won't actually do anything, but if you fill it with colored water, it'll look awesome. And she just like gave me like a shopping cart full of equipment from the science lab, because and she went in there and she was like pulling exactly, I mean, she knew what she wanted immediately. And about 10-15 minutes into this process, the like head of the department, this stodgy, really stern looking man, came into the room, and he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, and I explained to him what's going on, and he sort of glowers at me, and he turns away and he walks out, and I'm like, okay, but he didn't stop us, I guess that's okay. And a couple of minutes later, he comes back in with the biggest smile on his face and this Erlenmeyer flask that was like 3 feet tall and 16 inches across the bottom, and a round flask in the other hand that was sort of equal proportions. They were ridiculous and huge. And he was like, you're going to need these.
Oh my God. They all do it.
Scientists out there are ready at the drop of a hat to go rogue, is what I learned at that moment.
Are you still friends with these people?
I'm sure I could go make, I work at the school still, so yeah, I could go over and talk with them.
I have some sketches to share with them.
Wow. Well, that's cool. So now that really is just a big lead up to the question. So what scientific process are we going to explain when we submit our video?
Ooh.
Oh, right.
Yeah?
Well,
You can think about it.
Does
Don't have to
eating
answer it
cheese still
now.
count as a...
why
A
would
scientific process?
I mean, technically,
I grew up in
Yeah.
America.
it's biology.
I can only count to 50. And I can only eat pasteurized processed cheese product.
If it's not bright orange, it's
It's
not
not cheese. I don't know. There are so many good options. I mean,
Yeah. Well, think
depends
about it.
on how physical or how abstract you want to Abstract is not the right word.
Maybe think of it this way, because you guys know me. What would be the most fun thing to try and make me understand?
Um,
The mo-
how a CPU chip processes bits of information back into comprehensible
I
language.
was reading about that today when I programmed my first program in
programmed your first
Mac. I was
you programmed your first Mac program.
Yeah,
Surely
I've
you've
done. Look, I've done a hello. Well, I used to program. Oh God.
It's like our
God.
drug stories. It's
I
like,
used-
I started with
I started
Apple Basic.
in. I had a trashy 80, and I was in Basic, and I programmed all day as a kid in Basic.
Sure.
It didn't have any. It couldn't retain any memory if you
No,
turned
as
it
soon
off.
as you turned it off, it was gone.
Right, and it was this game that I programmed just straight from a book
Yeah.
about something involving a rectangle. I don't remember. I don't know. Anyway,
Something involving
involving a rectangle. And then I took later on in college. I took the beginnings of a C++ class, but the teacher didn't speak English, and that was fine. I mean, she spoke enough English, and she was I'm sure, brilliant. But because there were so many English abbreviations, it just didn't. It just was less
Translate
than
well.
productive. Yes, for my learning. But no, now I'm learning Objective C, and so I basically just did my first variant on a Hello World program today. And
Okay.
if you don't know, Hello World is usually the first kind of program that people write in almost anything. But mine was.
I have a paintbrushing
out
robot
of
that
this
the
one book
first
I was
thing it
using.
wrote was Hello World. Let me go find that.
Oh wow. Anyway, so I'm learning that, and that was. I like it. I'm just excited to be learning it because I'm a dork. And whatever. But I feel like coding is a skill that I will need in order to do more stuff with what I want to do with my art. So screw it, I'm gonna learn it.
See, that's far less dorky than when I, in college, decided to teach myself inform object coding.
Oh my god.
Which is what the old Zork text-based adventure games were. So they were already 15 years out of date by the time I decided to learn this coding language. And
It's like, did they use that stuff for? What's the one for mucks and mushes? What do you?
it's a
how
very
does that-
similar one.
It's similar, right?
Yeah, it's an object-oriented programming system.
And it's like you are in a field. To your left is a tree.
Well, we try to make
door,
it more interesting
a
than
snail,
that, but
and
yes,
your
that's
mother.
the basic idea. And the idea is that
Touch your mother. You wish you could touch your mother. We
Wow.
play different games.
Let Aaron finish.
Yeah.
back to Jeff's psychological analysis. Basically, everything about that sort of game, the Zork and the online system, was you coded on the object. So each room was an object, and each player was an object, and each inventory item was potentially an object. And so you would, if you had a specific inventory item and that inventory item, quote unquote, heard a specific command like look at chair, the chair itself, little bit of software, would respond with its description. Or if you had the sword and you said kill troll with sword, that programming would be in the sword. And then the troll coding would react damage or whatever. So everything was what is known as object-oriented programming. And
That's what Objective-C is. Yeah.
Developed more into the task-based GUI version of that, GUI being graphical user interface, GUI, so that buttons and windows and drop-down lists are objects that have the programming in them.
And they can behave and they can respond in a certain way.
So Inform, Zork really led... Actually, overall, video games have always led computer development. Basically, what ends up happening is somebody makes a computer because they can.
Right.
And it started with an oscilloscope. Just a device that graphically displayed vibration.
Right.
And they were able to code into that monitor system the game Asteroid.
I love that game. That explains the look of it. That's never occurred to me.
Triangles and awkwardly
And it's just
shaped.
these lines, yeah.
And so suddenly they had these games and they were pushing the hardware. So they made hardware specifically to deal with the software they were developing. So the games would push it, the hardware would advance. Once the hardware was there, Office and practical applications would fill in, being like, oh, well, now we can do this with this and keep track of calendars and time and calculations. And then somebody would start pushing with their game again and challenging the hardware. The hardware would advance following the games. Then the practical applications come
and then
in.
you get like the Atari, like Adam found in my house.
Yeah.
We think it's an Atari. Anyway, I don't know. I remember as a kid in the 90s sort of watching the bit wars. You know, you had the Nintendo, and then Super Nintendo came out, and it's like, well, now we're all 16-bit.
Right.
And then Sega tried, because they wanted to push the games, right? So they had to adjust the hardware to push the games.
And then that hardware goes into the personal computers, the
Right,
home computers.
exactly. And then you get the 32 bits, which never really hit. The 64-bit did hit with Nintendo, but PlayStation sort of leapfrogged them because they went to CDs, but then you had load time and blah, blah, blah. And now it's weird to me, talking about when we talked about the Wii U the other day, that Nintendo is really putting the brakes as far as on graphical advancements, and they're trying to move towards interactive like play advancements and things like that. You know, which I don't have a Kinect, but I wonder if Microsoft isn't doing it better.
I think currently they are. We'll have to wait to see what the Wii U actually comes out with. And Microsoft, after a stupid hesitation, has released the Kinect software.
Yeah, we did talk about that, I remember. But
it's becoming, I mean, that is now the hardware push that the practical applications are quickly going to follow.
And, well, the tablet, I mean, Microsoft's tablet's already doing that. If you haven't seen their Surface tablet, which I don't know if it's actually out yet, but they've got what looks like, it's a tablet, and it's got a kickstand built in, which is kind of cool. But they've got what looks like the iPad smart covers, that brightly colored piece of, razor-thin plastic with a full trackpad and keyboard built into that just lays flat on whatever surface you're on, which I think is brilliant. And they were talking about, I think in Windows 8, and if I'm misquoting, someone tell me, but in Windows 8 and on the tablets, which also can run full versions of Windows 8, they're talking about setting up the OS to be ready to accept certain features in the hardware, like in the tablet, where the tablet's got hardware in it to accept gestures that you wave in front of it, like the Kinect. Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. I think because, all right, if I can get on this for just a second, I think that from a who felt like the big guy, who felt like the little guy, who was being innovative and pushing, and who was sort of resting on their victories.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft is edging up, and I think Microsoft is actually who I keep watching, which is bizarre to me in some ways, but I think they just keep doing interesting stuff because they have to.
But for a long time, they were totally just.
But now they're building their own hardware.
Yeah.
Which is great, which I've been waiting for. I keep thinking, look, if people are gonna, tout Apple building its own hardware as its benefit, I'm like, Microsoft, build a really simple line of, I was saying at the time, PC devices that are, through and through your product, and see if you don't just blow them out of the water, because then you're competing on equal field. But I think they're being one smarter, and they're saying, we'll do that, but we're going to do it in the tablet environment where we can do something innovative, like run our full operating system on the tablet and appease the large business sector that we have.
Yeah.
I think I'm really excited to watch what they're doing right now. Anyway, I'm done. Cool. We should talk about art.
I
think GUI design is art.
I think it is. I think software and technology interactive design is going to be a lot. I mean, it's that design element that it may not be the emotional response of a painting, but the emotional response of like a beautiful car, a well-designed car, where it's got the lines and the features. And I think there is the work of art in those processes.
Well, proportions have to be good. I mean, I don't know. I like it when I see an interface design that makes me actually feel something. And I know that's really stupidly nerdy of me, but how much nerd have I put on the internet anyway?
Right, but sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. Yeah. But it was okay. There's another article that I found that kind of ties into this, and this is just a little post-it sort of article. But
That's
there's
all right.
talking about design, and I guess this would be more in the terms of software. But again, it's being designed for a specific group. There's a new tablet that has just come out called the Edify, EDIFI, which claims it's the world's first Christian tablet.
Sorry.
Listen, Edify features a web
You
browser.
godless people.
Edify features a web browser with a built-in safe search and options for Christian radio stations. It also runs the company's Holy Bible application, which contains 27 different English translations of the Bible. This is being made by a company called Cydle, Cydle, from South Korea, and it basically says it's very similar to a Kindle Fire. It's just being...
Censored.
Yes.
Yeah, but people are going to buy it. I mean,
course they're
people
gonna
are going
buy
to
it.
buy it. It's them knowing their... Gosh, yeah. Wow, it's them knowing their customer base. I mean... Wow.
Yeah.
There's a tablet for everyone.
There's that's fascinating that, I mean, you look at the marketing and the merchandising and people are going to snatch it up because it says Christian on it.
Yeah.
And whether the hardware is good or not, they're going to be like, oh, well, I feel like I'm doing a better thing with this one.
Right. Yeah. So the Edify, run out there and grab one.
They
Your
should
soul
make,
may depend on it.
It should be stone, like 10 Commandments, like, you know.
That'd
This
be a
is
good
the only
commercial.
tablet you need.
It's the only...
Be a good commercial for them. Moses comes down off the mountain,
Yeah.
pulls out an Edify.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, and then you could branch out into, like, the Hebrew market. Edify not.
Oy vey. I can think of nothing polite nor friendly to say about that article.
Sure. Let's see here. What else do I have?
Well, I don't...
Well, yeah. What?
Yeah.
What do you want to
No.
say?
What I want to say is I don't want to bash people over the heads for their beliefs. Like I don't want to do that. And it's interesting because, on the other hand, I do feel like culturally, beliefs are why things like our problem with scientific literacy is a problem.
I agree.
But I don't, you know what I mean? But we also, I totally respect the freedom of it all. Like we're able to exercise our freedom of speech about it right now, and I don't know. I don't know.
Fine.
I don't know.
But more than anything, the marketalization of it, the merchandising of it all. It bothers me on two separate levels, and the one I'll talk about is this idea of using people's beliefs to compel them to buy a certain product. That bothers me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I passed a church in Atlanta last October where they weren't doing anything for Halloween because that was horrible paganism, but they were selling pumpkins, which is fine. Except that their interchangeable church letter sign said, Jesus loves pumpkin buyers. Which, if you assume that Jesus loves everyone, is a true statement.
Right.
But it carries with it the implication that Jesus will love you more if you are a pumpkin buyer.
I'm hearing robot voice.
Robot God is attacking. Yeah. We're being smited. Smote? Smote. There we go. All right. After sacrificing various things to various altars, we have appeased the robot gods. And we are back.
Oh, we're back on?
Yes, we are back on.
I thought you were just testing. Okay.
No, I'm just being a turd. I think to, and you might have a counterpoint, but I think to wrap up that particular line of conversation, where I struggle is I don't want to believe in a thing where I feel like I'm just trying to avoid being punished for the rest of existence. And I also don't want to do a thing where I feel like I'm trying to trick an omnipotent being so that I can get to a place where I always get a cookie, because I feel like that being would know that I was just doing trickery and trying to be on good behavior. And do you know what I mean?
If they were at that point, then yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If it even cared, then my whole thing is I feel like if I should do good things because they are good things to do. Because
That's a good position.
Well, we'll find out when I die.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you will.
I will. I'll send you a memo.
Oh, please
A
go
burning, smoldering memo.
This note smells like sulfur.
Must be from Jeff.
It smells like sulfur and lack of repentance.
I think the only thing I was going to say was you were making a point earlier about exploiting a belief structure
Sure.
to sell something.
Yes.
And my only counterpoint was going to be that I feel all advertising does that anyway.
Oh, well, sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I guess it's not really
We have a
counterpoint, an
donate button.
But you just, basically, beliefs, both religious and a lot of things that dictate our everyday lives. Yes, science is all fact-driven, and that's a good thing to be aware of.
Yes.
But really, statistically, most of the way we live our life, the day-to-day stuff, is dictated by just habits that form.
Sure.
And those habits are largely dictated by what we've been
Impulse
thrown into.
and-
Impulse,
yeah.
And so there's not a lot of, I guess, rational explanation behind why we do a lot of the things we do, and advertising is getting very good at exploiting those things.
Which
Yeah,
I
we make a
dislike
choice.
that as well. But
Sure.
We make a choice and we stick with it. When do we tend to have brand loyalty by when? 30s? Like there's like
I would
something
say
I read.
way
Way-
earlier than that these days.
I guess so.
I mean, there was a recent study that I would have to look up and try and find in time to post on the site, but it was a test between like basic leaf identification and basic brand identification, and kindergartners, first graders, elementary school students could identify McDonald's and Wendy's and all sorts of things way earlier than they could map locations and leaves, like a really distinct oak leaf versus a pine needle kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'm probably misquoting this, but that was sort of the rough article point, was that the brands get in there super early. And I mean, the marketing is totally driven to use what is determined by the psychological control system.
Science.
By science.
Yeah. Ooh.
I mean,
one hand washes the other.
the princess phenomenon, for example.
Yes.
The last 10 years, the princess sale from Disney has gone way, way up. You've always had the princesses since you've basically had Disney, but this idea of branding everything with the 6 princesses and the distinctive pink and the distinctive blue that are branded with those organizations are marketed as specifically originally at the age group where children's gender identity is sort of coming into focus, but they have a very specific mindset at the age where gender identity and these princess things are marketed at about that 3 to 4 year old range. They have a very strong concrete understanding of the world and a very weak theoretical abstract concept of the world. So right as they're starting to figure out that there are boys and girls, they start worrying about, well, the thing that makes me a girl is that I look like a girl. The thing that makes me a boy is that I look like a boy.
Oh, wow.
Only what I can see from the outside is making me one gender or the other. And apparently it's a big deal if I act like the wrong gender because my peer group is telling me that, my teachers are telling me that, my parents are telling me that. And so they are driven during that age period to gender extremes. And so it's when boys tend, and I'm generalizing, tend to start playing cowboys and police and firemen and very masculine role sort of games, and the girls are starting to play with dolls and princesses and things that they have been taught to understand is a feminine ideal. Mm-hmm. So the Disney marketing engine latches on to what is the most feminine thing possible, a princess. Mm-hmm. That locks in then, and then is maintained as the child grows through the marketing and the branding. But they have triggered it to specifically hit at just the right point to lock it in.
Well, and I noticed now that Disney's bought Marvel, one of the reasons behind Disney buying Marvel was they needed to shore up their male clientele. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have noticed subtle things, but since Disney's bought Marvel, Marvel was doing a real push for strong feminine heroes originally,
and they
especially through the
off.
90s. Yeah, and now if you watch, the boy heroes are really coming back into sharp focus, and it's not that they're, actively, necessarily weakening their female heroes, but I think they've become less.
The new ones aren't appearing either.
I just think the new ones are. I mean, I'm generalizing, but I've just noticed that it seems like they've just amped up the boy angle a lot more.
I believe it. I mean, before Marvel,
I'm worried about what that means for, is the only place that Marvel and Disney are going to have strong female heroes are in their princesses.
It's possible, and they're trying to regenerate the princesses. Like Tiana works hard and does just as much to save Prince Naveen as he does to save her.
Right.
But it really is. It's an idea that, before the Marvel superheroes were starting to be used, they were pairing the princesses with the pirates.
Right.
And so while Pirates of the Caribbean had a nice strong run, all of the boy merchandise was going to the pirate theme, which is a very strong masculine, dirty, rough and tumble, swords, fighting.
Well, except for the Jack Sparrow character who sort of rides the gender line as he wants to.
Yeah. But in a more obscure way that the 3-year-olds still see him probably as masculine,
sure.
with the sword, with the stubble, and the hair is an indication. But I would guess, without doing any great research on it, that he still reads as a masculine character.
I demand you do great research as a scientist.
I will see what I can
which
come
I am
up
not.
With. So it is interesting about Marvel focusing once again on what is an audience-driven thing rather than an artist-driven thing, because they're now a big monolithic corporation. They are beholden to their readers because that's who buys the comic books, and they're beholden to their corporate overlords.
Oh, sure. I forget who I was talking to about this with. Maybe it was you. I can't remember. But there was basically this line of thought that Marvel, not that they don't necessarily make money off of the comic books, the print comics, whatever, but really the larger money game is to be made like Disney did in the merchandising and the licensing of the characters and the products into the films, into toys, into other things. And that the comic books themselves are perhaps, you could argue, more of a vehicle to the only way that you're going to get new characters to merchandise, to license, whatever, or new versions of characters you like, is to have them emerge from the comics, because the true fans of Marvel are the ones that read the comics, and then there's that halo effect of people that are associated with them, that, you've got the wife, let's say, if I can be really stereotypical, why not? The wife who's married to the guy who's really, really deep into comic books, or has been since he was a kid, whatever. He's into Iron Man, but not just Iron Man. Like, he got into Iron Man when he was in the silver armor period and the stealth armor, and whatever that was, the 80s, whatever it was. So let's say you've got that, right? So for that guy, he's going to really snatch up the general, the weird collector action figures of Iron Man that are in the silver armor from that period, right? Whereas his wife is like, oh, well, I've watched all the new Iron Man movies, and I will buy him Iron Man stuff because he likes it, or I'll, get us something cute and matching. Again, I'm being very gender awful right now, but I'm just illustrating a point because I have seen this happen. You could flip the genders and the story would work just as well. Anyway, and then, like, the whole family goes to the movie premieres, or they all know this guy likes this thing. And so some people start to get into it by association or whatever, and there's that kind of... I'm lost as to where I was going with this whole thing now.
I was curious.
I had somewhere I was really going with it. Oh, right. But the only way for the halo effect to ever happen is if that Marvel keeps the comics going and does things like create the new Spider-Man, the new Ultimate Spider-Man, Miles Morales, the African-American one, who I've mentioned several times before, who, as a true fan, I'm really into. And if I see like a figure of his, then, I'd probably buy it or whatever. But they only would get that money from me because they're still continuing the comics, which makes it an exciting time to read comics if they're willing to be dangerous and take some chances. But anyway, I don't know. I think maybe we might move away from that fear that you used to have with franchises like Star Trek.
Disappear out from under you?
No, I was thinking more of that. The people who get really mad when something happens to a character. How dare they do X to this character? I've been following this character since 1965. And then complain that the stories aren't any good because you haven't allowed them to take chances.
Right. But really, the truth is there's been so many different iterations of all those characters that it's hard to even marry all of those different instances and events together.
Yes, and I think if you're a real fan of comics, you go, oh, right, they've always been turning over and radically changing since they were created.
Yeah.
But you just get hung up on what you know. Maybe it's the anti-effect of that brand loyalty. This is the character I like that I care about so much.
Well, it also goes into
you shocked me.
The parasocialization.
Oh yeah, your friends are different suddenly.
Your friends are different or hurt. And
right.
If you do have a 20-year relationship with a comic book character because their story arc has gone on for 20 years,
right,
and then something big comes, it is going to trigger those same neurological points as on a weaker scale as if something happened to your other 20-year-old friend.
I had that reaction to Ultimate Spider-Man, the Peter Parker version, his death. I mean, I've been following that comic since 2001. Yeah. And they just killed him. And, it was so well written, that it had become my Spider-Man. That's the Spider-Man I want to read. And I love the new Spider-Man. He's great, but I still have that weird. Yeah, it did, and maybe that's why I'm willing to go on the ride with this new character. Is I'm on number one, there's a Peter Parker out there in the regular universe. That's fine. That helps, I guess. But number two, it's am I in it or am I in it? So it's interesting to me. Nerd. Yeah. Can we get the nerd board and just rack up my points for the day, please?
I don't think it's surprising any listener that we all have slightly nerdish tendencies.
Ooh.
But we are also out of time for the day.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to wrap up here.
Oh, yeah. So sign-offs.
Sign-offs. I'm Aaron, and I want to be the next Mr. Wizard.
I'm Jeff, and I don't want to be the next Spider-Man if it means that the previous Spider-Man dies, nor do I want to be the first Spider-Man if it means I have to die so that there can be a second, different version of I just shouldn't be Spider-Man. I'm done with my sign-off.
Pithy.
Yeah. My name is Adam, and I fell asleep during Jeff's sign-off, but I will also just say, make me your god. Is that too big?
Play the music really loud during that point.
Kneel before me, son of God.
If someone asks if you're a god, you say
yes.
Can you check that on the census? Religion, me.
Jedi counts now.